All right. Hello, and welcome to Sonoma County Wildlife on this very first day in July 2020. And so today we're going to be checking in on some of the about 120 or so patients that are on site here at the moment. While we wait for everyone to join us, we are just taking a peek at one of the incubators. We are in the middle of our typical summer wave of raccoons. And so we do have, all right, here we go. Just flickering our connection, but we seem to be set. And so we are in the middle of our typical summer wave of raccoons. We do have raccoons all the way from these little orphans that still on bottle feeding, eyes and ears closed and all that, all the way up to ones that, as you'll see, are out in our larger outside enclosures, growing up, getting ready towards release. Someone wants to chime in to let me know if my volume is doing okay. We are using the microphone again, which is a great improvement. However, I'm wearing my mask since we're close to other folks at the moment. And so I'd appreciate that feedback. Today's lineup is that we will tour around the whole setup. And so we will take a peek at some of our smaller patients, some of our newer patients, all along the way. And so at this moment in our hospital, we have several batches of raccoons, we have a couple squirrels, and we have a mother opossum. And so yet another facial trauma mother opossum in today. And so any feedback yet on our volume?
Laura says the volume and clarity is great.
Excellent. All right. Thank you guys so much. And so from here, we'll just, so these little orphans are doing just fine. And so they're on our typical, they needed some fluids. They were a bit dehydrated, otherwise on bottle care. And so while you never know how the story ends, everything is hopeful so far. We're just going to swing into the room 10 here and take a peek. So this is our converted closet. From when our facility here is a converted house. And so in here we do have another mother opossum with 10 babies, a little bit older, also facial trauma. And so if you want to take a peek at this snoozing family. And so we just released those grown-up babies from the last mother opossum with facial trauma. This one doesn't seem as severe. She does have a couple broken teeth from the injury that happened, but her jaw itself was intact on x-rays. And so once we upped the pain med and moved her into this, or tweaked our pain meds rather, and moved her into this more spacious location, she's been eating well, taking care of all her little ones so far. And so she also has eye trauma and one eye that's not viable. And so after those babies are a little bit bigger, we will end up extracting the fractured teeth as well as resolving that eye issue. But so far, this group also looks to have an excellent outcome. And so, believe it or not, you are looking at 11 opossums, 10 babies and one mom. Some of those babies are in the pouch, so you can't see them as clearly. And so we do get opossums coming in, trickling in, but we're definitely in the middle of our raccoon time of year. And so today we're going to head outside next, and we'll check in on some of the raccoons as they're growing and thriving. And then after that, we'll take a peek at some of our other intakes and ending up looking at several birds and then patient 750 for the year. We're midway through the year, pretty much midway through typical intake numbers. And so we'll take a peek at that patient, which is a very unusual patient, but outcome's still not clear. So we'll take a peek. It is a pretty special species that is native around here. And so we're going to end up walking a little bit as we head on through the facility. And so we are in the typical ebb and flow where we have about 120 patients on site right now. I'm going to head through the kitchen on the way out. And we have just about as many coming in as we're releasing, so we'll probably stay at that 100+ number throughout most of the summer until we get our second wave of opossums, in which case it'll peak back up again. And so I don't know if we've ever taken a peek at the kitchen area, And so we do have our setup and our so helpful volunteers and interns who help us prep all the diets for all the, like I said, over 100 animals on site right now. And so this is where that happens. Thanks to everyone who brought in those eggs. We definitely, we are in the middle of our raccoon batch, raccoons, as they wean, they do need a lot of protein. We want to avoid, as much as possible, feeding them anything other than the more natural foods. And so we don't want to feed them dog food or cat food as much as possible. So having those eggs are a great way, as well as rodents and a mix of other materials that will feed them as well. And so feel free to ask any questions. For those of you joining us, my name is Dan, Dr. Dan Famini. I am the veterinarian here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. And now that I'm away from other folks, I'll go ahead and take my mask off. Hopefully that's a little bit clearer. It's a beautiful July day. And so now we have had 750 intakes this year. In other counties, you'll see individual facilities that will have double or triple that. And that's because here in Sonoma County, we have not just Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue, but we also have Bird Rescue and the Songbird Hospital. And so the number of intakes for a lot of wildlife centers in general is often centered around birds. And while we do treat a fair number of birds, particularly raptors, the songbirds and a lot of those other species will just transfer to those other facilities instead. And so here in Sonoma County, we between the different facilities, we share the burden. And so that's the way that operates in this collegial county. And so bird rescues in Santa Rosa, Songbird Hospitals in Sebastopol, and we, of course, are located in beautiful Petaluma, California. And so we're about to hit along Raccoon Row. And so we're in the typical time of year where we have our smaller raccoon enclosures, these 4 enclosures that have younger raccoons that are big enough to be outside but not near towards release. As they get larger yet, they'll transfer to our 3 larger enclosures before they do get returned to the wild. And so we'll take a peek in a couple of these guys. Now these are wild but young raccoons, so they'll probably just hide back in the corners. But I want you guys to see the kinds of enclosures as these guys mature. Now these raccoons, for the most part, all have individual microchips so that we can keep track of their weight. With the opossums, we can use the ear tags, but with the raccoons, they don't tolerate that as well. And so we have to use the microchips, which is the same microchip that you'd use in your dog and cat. And so if they ever come back through the center, we know, but it's pretty rare for the same individual to come back through later on in life. And so this is a typical enclosure, and you can actually kind of see through the chain link to the whole suite of our 4 different foster or orphan setups. And so this has been before we've done the morning cleaning and feed out just yet. And so I would suspect most of them are going to be lurking in here. And so let's see. Oh, and if you look down the line, you can see peeking out of those den boxes, some of the other raccoons in the neighboring enclosures. So let's see how this group is doing. Are you going to be able to take a peek? Okay. Oh, here we are, friends. Hi, guys. And so we usually at this age, we only will check in on them a couple times a week, make sure they're gaining good weight, intervene if need be in terms of nutritional or other support, but they still have a fair bit of growing to do. We'll keep them in groups of anywhere from 2 to 6, depending on the details of who we have at what size and age cohort. And so this is good behavior when that as we came in, they were just trying to hide, trying to be back. That's what we want. We want to make sure these animals remain anxious and apprehensive of human interaction, because if we do not do our job well, and they do run right up to people, well, that's going to be a catastrophic outcome, and that will probably be the end of that raccoon. And so these guys they should be weaning by now. Sometimes they still need a little bit of help at this age, but at this size, hopefully they're fully weaned. I'd have to check in the records. There's so many here, I don't know them all off the top of my head. And they'll be eating a variety of fruits and proteins. You can, littered around their tin box, there's all sorts of eggshells, fruit pieces, and fruit peels as well. And so these are our omnivorous, one of the more common species around here in Sonoma County. And so, of our roughly 1,500 intakes a year, we'll get 100, maybe 200 raccoons as part of that. And so we're in the early wave of that, where we have them here at this younger age. Any questions pop up so far?
non-specific to wildlife. One person did ask, how many places do you work at? I've seen you at 3 so far.
Gotcha. So I am regularly employed. I'm here part-time at the Wildlife Center. I'm also at the emergency hospital called Pet Care in downtown Santa Rosa, and I'm full-time faculty at the junior college. Every once in a while I'll fill in at other places, especially when the junior college is not in session. And then I'll help out some of the other, the Songbird Hospital or Reptile Rescue as need be. There's another veterinarian who does most of the care for bird rescue, but if he's not around, we'll fill in for each other, things like that. And so the wonderful thing about veterinary medicine is that it's not just one job, it is a whole career field. And so if you guys are interested in that career field, there is, of course, the veterinarian level, most people are familiar with, but there's also registered veterinary technicians, RVT. And so I run an RVT program at Santa Rosa Junior College. And if anyone has someone out there who's just kind of curious on the veterinary careers, I actually have a new class this fall, Animal Health 101, Intro to Veterinary Careers, where we explore the possibilities. The vet tech classes themselves in the program, they're very rigorous, so you want to make sure you're serious before you jump into that. And let me just put that lock back on. And so that was the small size of these as they move to our outside enclosures. We'll see, we do have already one cohort of raccoons that are big enough to be in the larger enclosure. And so they still have some growing to do before they're ready to head out in the world. But we'll let you guys take a peek at the next level. Now, of course, in terms of, there's going to be a whole bell curve of how early or late that individuals are going to be born, and so therefore that we have them coming in as orphans, plus all the injured. We'll keep getting a variety of ages through the rest of the summer and into fall. So now with these larger ones, we do have our double door system. So if there was a more bold individual, we wouldn't have to worry about them bolting as we first get to that door. And so these guys are going to be a little bit older, a little more capable. They're, again, still have some growing, maturing to do before they're ready for release, but you can see we have a large cohort of bigger raccoons here in this enclosure, and I'm glad to see this good escape behavior where they're just trying to get to the highest and furthest corner from us. This is exactly what we'd hope for in successful rehab patients. So these guys were some of those teeny tiny orphans that you saw back when we were first doing our initial live streams that came in the first couple weeks. And so these are all thriving, all doing well. In terms of medical issues, it's not uncommon for orphans to come in and have some GI upset, some diarrhea, especially if the finder gave them regular milk or KMR, things that are not appropriate for the species. And there's a few tools we have in our toolbox to try to resolve that or test to look for deeper issues. But other than that, this cohort hasn't had any major issues. There's actually a couple different litters that have since been combined. But they're still several weeks yet from being big enough to return to the wild. And so, not months, but weeks. We do release them once they're fully capable, so we don't wait till they're completely full size. They're kind of teenager-ish, as you guys saw with the opossums that we released last week. There's a question there about raccoons washing their food and why do they do this. That is an excellent question. And so you'll hear rumors out there that raccoons don't have salivary glands and they need to wet their food. Not true. They totally have salivary glands. In terms of, they will often, very commonly, rinse their food before they eat it. There's a lot of theories out there, but there's no definitive answer as to why. And so it's just one of those mysteries. In fact, we don't even know their typical lifespan out in the wild. I mean, we can estimate from cadavers that are found, but raccoon, there's not really the funding to put a lot of trackers on to follow these guys. And raccoons are just so capable, they're not going to tolerate a lot of the trackers that would be on there as well. So there's a lot of things about raccoons, even though they're so ubiquitous in our environment, where the details are not fully understood. Certainly, we do have some records from captive raccoons, but that's not anything I'd ever encourage. All right, so now you can see how, and so like I said, we're in the middle of our first raccoon wave, and so as the weeks of summer go on, we'll have all 4 of those other cage enclosures grow and mature till they head out to these larger enclosures and then eventually out into the world. And so hopefully the timing will work out for us to do one of those releases as a live stream as well. And so Raccoons, in terms of an infectious disease, the biggest worry we have with these guys, they certainly get distemper, and they can also get parvovirus. Now, the parvo of raccoons seems to be closer to the cat parvo than the canine parvo, but they are kind of in between in terms of the species groups, and so either one is possible. And so those are kind of the most devastating diseases we see commonly. And then there is the raccoon roundworm, Balis ascaris procyanus, which is normal in wild raccoons. It is a roundworm. If they have heavy burdens, it can cause problems, but isn't usual. But the unique feature of that roundworm is the microscopic eggs of the roundworm that are defecated out in the feces. If they are consumed by another animal, if it's consumed by another raccoon, then they wander around in that tissue till they end up into the intestines. But if they get into a species other than a raccoon, then those little microscopic worms get lost and they often go to the brain. And so that's why raccoon row is separate just for raccoons. Now that we've had raccoons in there, even though we do regularly deworm them for that possibility and screen them, that we're not going to use that for any other species, and because we wouldn't want that the risk of that disease going from the raccoons to causing issues with some of our other species, and that's any other species. Avian, mammals, even humans could get that worm if it was in them inappropriately. All right, so we're going to swing next to a row we don't often go down. This is actually our isolation row, and so most of the time we'll use this area for animals that we're worried about having things like distemper or infectious diseases that we're still in a monitoring phase. These are relatively Spartan cages because this is all about being able to disinfect. Once an animal is cleared of disease, we'll move it out to the more naturalistic ones that you guys just saw. But we also will use this as a nice quiet place. In terms of beavers, big update on beavers. So that beaver that we saw the first couple weeks, that one actually passed all its assessment and is happily back out in the wild. And it's just in time because we got not one, not two, but 3 new baby beavers that just came in. And so this is a trio that came up from the Auburn area. There was a farmer who killed the adult beaver. And then after he killed that beaver, these young offspring emerged, and is not uncommon. Someone didn't have the heart to kill the babies too, so they brought them to the rehab center. It's transferred until it came to us. Now we're redoing part of our aquatic animal enclosure to be able to handle these young beavers. Certainly when they're older, it's already a great setup for them. But we do have this trio. Now they came in as a trio, and so they are bonded to each other. And so unlike the last one, which needed that constant care and attention to be able to eat and maintain basic function, these guys, they have each other. And so they are doing great. These guys, now I'm not going to be handling or petting this one, these guys as we did with that previous one, just because they have each other, therefore they don't need that human interaction, and we don't want to do anything more than we need to in terms of getting them over accustomed to humans. But let's take a look at this trio. That's close enough. And so in terms of diet, you can see we are offering them rodent blocks as well as a variety of veggies, and we are already offering them branches, and I'm very happy to see they are already doing their work in terms of taking care of some of that bark. And so let's take a peek at this trio. Hi guys. And so these guys, very different behavior. This is very healthy, happy behavior, where they're a little bit nervous about this kind of attention, which is fine. We won't stay here for very long, but I wanted you guys to be able to appreciate them while they are in this adorable age. And so these guys will be growing up here. They'll be here for a very long time, probably over a year. And because beavers do develop and grow much slower than some other species. So while those raccoons only need weeks, these guys will need many, many months before they're set to return to the wild. But because they have each other, they have excellent chances. Now they've only been here a few days, and so sometimes, if there is disease states, it won't necessarily be clear yet. All right. Well, I'm not going to set this down because they are escaping away, so I don't want to accidentally irritate their tails or anything. So I'll wait for them to move on, and then I'll set this back down. And so beavers are, of course, large rodents. These guys only weigh about, like 250 grams or so like half a pound when they came in. a few days ago. And a full-size one is going to be 40 to 60 pounds. So you can see they have a ton of growing to do. If you want to keep the camera on them versus me, that'll be what people really want to see. And so I haven't checked in on questions in quite some time. Anything been popping up?
Not about beaver.
Okay, that's fine. And just for those of you watching along, do be aware there's about a 1 to 2 minute delay between when we are broadcasting out and when your comments show up from our side. And so if we don't answer right away, it's trying to handle that time delay through the Facebook Live feature. And so what's been coming up?
Somebody asking if we need eggs or food.
And so for eggs, I think we're set for the moment.
Yeah, for at least a month. Fruit and vegetables, people should call before they drop in.
Yes, and so while absolutely we do have a constant need for fruit and veggies, the details of which ones we need does keep ebbing and flowing depending on what's coming in. And so that is of great help to us. But please do call in first so we can make sure it's a good fit for what we have on all that perishable stuff at the moment. But as you can see, things like the fruit, that's going to be food that we have to provide for our omnivores, such as our raccoons, as well as for our strict herbivores, such as these guys right here. Why did the farmer kill the mom? Do I know? Nope, I don't. And so I can't explain the actions of all. I would assume that there were some trees that the beaver was bothering. Now here in Sonoma County, there is a bit of a more progressive attitude towards coexisting with wildlife, and also because the predominant farm crop around here are grapes. And so a lot of people understand the critical importance that beavers have towards a healthy watershed. And so beavers really are keystone species for trying to make both improve the water in the soil around here, which also contributes towards having our land be more fire resistant. And so locally, right here, we do, well, not everyone is of this mindset. The majority is very eager to collaborate with us. But in other parts of the state, it's not always the same attitude. And so when will they be old enough to be moved to rehab enclosure? Definitely weeks, maybe a month or two. Gotta wait. And so they'll be introduced to it, and they'll be introduced to the water. But in terms of moved out there permanently, it's going to be a race to see if our remodel of the lower half of it made for these younger guys kicks in first, or if these guys outgrow to being okay for the larger area. And so, but definitely at least weeks. And so we'll start, I mean, they already have a water trough in here that they can access. And actually, so this entire base here is covered in sod. Beavers, their feet, their palmar and plantar surfaces, as well as their tail, are prone to all sorts of injuries if they have too firm ground. And so we do cover the entire area in sod, and we do give them this access to water, and we do gradually encourage them more and more to use it as we head them towards the larger, more outside areas. All right, and so this is a bit of a tricky door, so you'll see me struggle here for a moment. And so we are going to head down towards our Raptor Recovery Center and check in on some of the birds that are there. And so, I know people come in, join in here at all points in time. Was this from the outside door?
No.
Okay. And so, just to touch base, today, July 1st, 2020, we have about 125 patients here on site at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. That's a typical number for this time of year. And we have had, I think it's 40 species come through for the year. Yeah, and so if I'm actually maybe even closer to 50, because I think we're hitting towards just about at 20 mammal species. Quite a few of those are different species of bats. We've had over 6 or so species of bats come through. And then we've had over 24 different species of avian patients come through. So typical diversity, but that is kind of highlight just how diverse the natural world around us here in Sonoma County is. Walking by some of our squirrel enclosures, and so some of those orphans you saw from a month ago are outside, just doing their final stages of development before they're ready to head on out. And so western gray squirrels are the most common species we have coming in here. Red fox squirrels sometimes, and the ground squirrels sometimes, but we don't have as many ground squirrels in Sonoma County as in other pockets of the state. And so, any other questions popping up?
Not so far.
Okay. And so for an animal, if it comes here through the center, if it survives the first 24 hours, then about 80% of patients do go on to be returned to the wild. And so, which is pretty comparable, just slightly better than kind of average rehab centers. However, that first 24 hours, that is risky. For an animal to come into a wildlife center like this, these are free-ranging wildlife. And so for them to be, so many things have to happen. They have to be sick or injured. Gotcha. They have to be in such a way that they are still surviving but catchable by someone. They have to be able to handle the stress of captivity. And so when we pop into the Raptor Center here, we got 5 patients in there at the moment, and they really do kind of exemplify the whole spectrum of possible worries and outcomes, both the promising patients and the ones we're more concerned about, because you have not just the disease features, but you also have the behavioral features that you have to worry about with wildlife. And so, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and put my mask back on. Okay, so we do have 5 different species in here right now. You can hear one of them clacking. And so what I'm just going to go through from left to right, and at the end we'll reveal who patient 750 was. And so first of all, we do have, as you can hear clacking away, is, first of all, let me know if the sound is muffled from the mask. We do have our juvenile great horned owl. Now again, we haven't cleaned yet. We're still early in the morning. We're getting right to that. And so this is an individual that has actually a fracture, has a break on its leg. Now the break was already too calloused to be a good candidate for trying to reshape that leg, either in terms of splinting or in terms of trying to do any surgery. However, it is still quite functional. He is putting good weight on it. And so he's a young growing bird. They tend to lay down bone really fast. And so he actually has a very good chance at healing. So we're keeping him in a small enclosure so he doesn't cause any more stress or mobility than need be. And the concern down the line will be making sure that callus doesn't interfere with any of the tendons or other function. But so far, really quite promising. And then the next door is the barn owl. Actually, is this the one that we looked at and just seemed like soft tissue injury? Okay. And so we can we'll go down the line, doing a quick peek. And so this is another one that was found down, but on full x-ray and evaluation, no skeletal injury. And so sometimes they do just have muscle or soft tissue injury. So he's on meds. Oh, that's a bit of a stress behavior. We'll let him be. And so that one, often in cases like this, they just need some time to recoup and recover it and do well. Now next door, however, we have a different mismatch. We have a red shoulder hawk. Now this is a hawk that has a break on its ulna. And by the medical status of it, it's just one bone of those 2 side by side, single fracture. It, in theory, should be a great candidate for just putting in a sling and it'll heal up just fine. It has that capacity. However, red shoulder hawks are really high-strung birds. And so we never know if they're going to tolerate even the basic kind of care of just, and so we'll take a quick peek at this one. So red shoulders and red tails can look similar. You want to get ready to take a peek. And so, oh yeah, he's laying down. So they must have just treated him. And so with red shoulders, so he's still very much alive. And so what happens is those birds, they get so stressed out from any handling that they just kind of sit there. And so I just tweaked his pain meds to have more of a sedative to him to try to mellow him out a little bit. And then by the time we check on them again a few hours later, they're up and perched. And so it's just some of these species, they're wild animals. And the being in captivity, even for something temporary like a broken wing, sometimes can be too much for them. So far, doing okay. But that is part of the challenge of wildlife rescue. And then lastly, we have our screech owl. And so who's back in the corner there? So this is the one with the eye issues. And so in terms of the cornea, in terms of the surface of the eye, there's been improvement, but that has also, however, revealed not only was there an issue with the surface of the eye, but there's a problem with the lens deeper down. And so this is of the 3 birds we looked at before, we had some injury, some that should heal that just need some time, some that the behavior is going to be an issue, but then sometimes with the medicine, we just don't know full impact of what all the possibilities are. There is a novel herpes virus that can affect owls, so we ordered the right antiviral medication, and that helped. but there's something else going deeper in the ear. So this is one where I'm going to call in a favor and try to get an eye specialist, a veterinary ophthalmologist, to give us, see if there's further insight. And so that's kind of a lot about the basic spectrum of what we have going on with our birds. And then lastly, we'll take a peek at patient 750. And so this is a bird that we have, the largest raptor that we have around here in Sonoma County. It is a golden eagle. Now, before you guys get too excited, the outcome of this bird is very much unknown. And so this is an eagle that was actually found from a couple counties away, was transferred to us, although we do have them native around us as well, just not in high numbers. And so with golden eagles, this guy initial assessment includes some issues with the wing, but also worried about a heart murmur. And so when it comes to raptors, one of the main reasons they could have a heart murmur is actually lead toxicity. If they ingest something that has lead, or if there's prey that has lead shot, that is then that will build up in the body, and if it goes to the point where it causes heart murmurs, it often is associated with a poor outcome. So we are early in the process with this guy yet. I'm going to take some better X-rays of him today, see if we can determine what's going on that front, and we'll kind of go from there. But I'll let you guys take a peek. And so with wildlife medicine, we always have to balance our finances of what we can do when you give them species. And then also there's only so much they will tolerate. And then plus we also have the concern of the medical status that we're dealing with itself. And so this, in terms of body condition score, this one actually came in decent. It's a little bit thin, but not dramatic. And so we do have both golden and bald eagles around Sonoma County. Like I said, this one came from a couple counties over, from the Middletown area. And so we'll see in the weeks ahead if this is a case that turns around. It hasn't even been here a full, or just barely been here a full 24 hours now. So we'll see how things go. We're just going to step outside so we can let our care staff continue with the work. And so that is the nature of the work we do. And so I'll just talk here for a minute or two, let any last questions flow in before we pause for today. For next week, my hope is that we'll have someone, maybe perhaps that very barn owl, someone who's ready to do another live release. Those are always exciting, and we certainly are releasing a lot of animals this time of year. It's just about coordinating some of the details of some of our efforts here. But you see that there's some injuries, some maladies can be difficult to assess and know how to treat. Other maladies are issues that the animals themselves make it difficult to treat. But luckily, most patients do go on to have a good outcome, and that is the reward. That returning them to the wild is the whole purpose of all of our efforts. But wildlife work is not for the faint of heart. You do have to be able to deal with all the ups and downs of any medical kind of occupation. But especially with wildlife, it's because they come in such rough state so often, and because you can't cuddle them, you can't do that personal interaction. It does have its own unique aspects. Any questions coming through at the moment?
Yeah. Do you know if the golden eagle is from Lake or Mendocino County?
So I know I believe the finder note was Middletown, but I don't know if that was exactly where it was found or not. I'd have to take a peek on that spot.
How old do you estimate the eagle is?
So I'm not done my veterinary intervention yet today. That later, and so after its treatments, we'll give it some time to rest, and then I'll jump in, do my full evaluation. We'll get X-rays, and then we'll have some more information on that front. But I don't have those answers for you just yet.
And then one more. Margaret asked, can birds get chelation therapy?
Chelation therapy, yes, they can. So if it is a confirmed lead patient, then chelation therapy is a term for when we try to bind the metal in the body to be able to take it out of the body. And it is absolutely a possibility. And we've done chelation on a handful of patients before. The kicker with this case is if the heart issues are due to lead toxicity, then often it's too late for chelation therapy to have a good outcome in terms of the impact on the heart. But yes, that absolutely is a tool in our toolbox that we will consider using, and if appropriate, absolutely will use. What's that?
Do you want to just mention tours?
Oh, yes. And so this is July 1st, and then assuming the governor doesn't close things down again and our county is safe for it, our tentative plan is to actually to open up again for our Saturday tours. And so the way that operates is it is touring the education loop. Now, we are going to put a number of changes in place. We're only going to have small groups. If you're from different households, you're going to be spaced apart. And so there's a whole list of our COVID protocols. And this is by reservation only. But if you are interested, then do please email in or call the regular hotline, and we can get all that information to you and set something up. But not this weekend, but the following weekend on July 11th, on that Saturday, is our hope to actually be able to have you guys come down in person again. Now, for the tours, you don't look at the rehab areas that we're peeking at today, but that will include a tour of all of our education ambassador animals, which includes the coyotes, the foxes, the raccoons, the opossum, the skunk, and our mountain lions, and also our barnyard, our PEEP, our predator prevention area, and the small ruminants and poultry, and catio, and all of that as well. And this is just a great setting too, a great place to be outside, to be in a profoundly ventilated area, and so safe and away. You would need to wear face masks and all the typical concerns, but happy to say that, assuming the state doesn't turn the other direction, we'll be restarting tours in just a week and a half on July 11th. And so because we'll have limited spots, if you're interested, please do call or email in to jump on that possibility. Any other questions rolling in? And so I know last time when we did our live stream, we had people watching from far-flung areas, from across the country or even across the world, so that was very fun. And so my name is Dr. Dan Femini, the veterinarian here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week.